Very good. Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025, at 6 p.m. We do have a quorum present of the Board of Commissioners of the Chittenden Solid Waste District. This is a regular meeting, been properly warned, and I would like to then open the meeting, commence with the business of the evening. Let's see, do we have our Executive Director on board?
Yes.
Yes, she is. Good. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is the agenda itself. Are there any requests for changes or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll follow the agenda as presented in the packet. Second item on the agenda is the public comment period. Are there any members of the public present either in person, via phone, or via Zoom who wish to address the Board of Commissioners? I would like to acknowledge that we have some representatives from Myers here, and they will be invited to speak to the board in just a few minutes when we get to that part of the agenda. So I don't think they want to address us at this point in time. Well, hearing no members of the public present either in person or via phone or via Zoom, we will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of board meetings from January 22nd, 2025 and February 3rd, 2025, our standard program update memos, and the finance warrant, cash investment, and reserve balance memos. Are there any requests to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion and consideration? Hearing none, the consent agenda will be accepted as presented. We're ready now already to move on to item 4, which is the solid waste management fee exemption concerning asphalt shingles. Just so the board is aware, I'm going to in a moment allow Sarah and staff to make a presentation and walk us through their memo. And then I want to give the folks from Myers a chance to address the board and share their concerns and considerations, their point of view. Then we'll open it up for discussion and questions by commissioners. When we get to that point, I'd ask that you try to remember as best as possible, address your questions to me and not directly to one another, especially if you've got a question for Myers folks. Sometimes it's a little bit better to manage it if I can stay in the middle and not just have a kind of a repartee back and forth, and we can kind of keep things going, and also out of respect for other commissioners that might have a question and want to give them an opportunity. So as best as we can, we'll try to follow that process. So with that preamble, I'll turn it over first to Sarah, and then I bet some staff folks will be speaking up.
Thank you, Paul. I apologize for not being present in the room, but I'm feeling a little under the weather tonight, so I don't want to cause anyone else any illness. I'm actually going to turn this over to Joey Catania, who is our compliance and safety manager. He'll be able to run through the request and staff's recommendation.
So Joey, I'll turn it over to you, and if you can give us a little bit of history and walk us through. It's in the memo, but if you can.
Yep, so I'll just quickly run through the memo and provide some context. The CSWD ordinance banned asphalt shingle for disposal in 2016 at the request of Myers in support of A&R's goal at the time. Since then, markets for recycling shingles have become unreliable, and in 2023, the board waived the separation requirement for materials at a meeting. Myers had a stockpile of asphalt shingles that they were not collecting the fee on because we were assuming those would ultimately be recycled. That didn't come to pass. They've now been going to the Coventry landfill. We assume that stockpile has been depleted. So we are requesting that the board begin to impose the 25% of the solid waste management fee based for the asphalt shingles, as is written in our ordinance. The asphalt shingles are ultimately ending up in the landfill. So right now, let me backtrack slightly. So the asphalt shingles are being used in the landfill as road base, which is allowing for less virgin materials to be needed to build a road base at the landfill, which is a great thing. And our ordinance is written so that when either alternative landfill cover or infrastructural improvements are used with solid waste material that's ultimately ending up in the landfill anyways, that material gets a 75% reduction in the solid waste management fee. So since that's what's happening with asphalt shingles, that is what we would like to end the full waiver of the solid waste management fee and establish the 25% solid waste management fee as described in our ordinance.
Thank you, Steve. That's it, Joey, and Sarah, you're, nothing else that you would like to add at this point?
No, not at this point.
Invite you folks if you'd like to come up and sit here, and if you could identify yourselves, and then give you about 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name is Dave Ange and Joe Stronog is with me. We're representing Myers. The family's on vacation this week, given school vacation. And first thing Jeff wanted to do was thank the board for the waiver that was given previously for the fee for the asphalt shingles, because we had a stockpile and we didn't know how they were going to be used or how to use them. And what we found, and Casella has documented that, is that this is a great use in the landfill. It reduces the amount of mined gravel. So a natural resource. This is replacing a natural resource in the landfill that they have to truck in and use as road base. Now, to give you a little history, when we were recycling asphalt shingles and using them with the state of Vermont, one of the applications was roadside. So on the edge of the pavement, they have gravel. So we would mix the shingles with the gravel and use it, and it reduced the amount of mined gravel. Okay, that was considered recycling. So I still believe, and Meyer still believes, that this is still recycling. Now, I know it's in the landfill and you guys have this ordinance that you have in place, but we're reducing the amount of natural materials that are mined to build these roads in the landfill. We were using them before on the road shoulders in the state of Vermont until that dried up and we couldn't use them anymore, and that was considered recycling. So to me, it's not much different than using them on road shoulder or using them in the landfill. You're still saving the virgin raw material. Now, the other point I'd like to make is that the state of Vermont agrees with this. So the state of Vermont does not charge us any tax on the asphalt shingles being used in the landfill. And that's why our take is we should continue, or we're asking that you continue with waiving the fee, the solid waste management fee on the asphalt shingles used in the landfill as road base.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll now open up for discussion from board members, and recognize Alan Nye.
Would like to question whether they have a current stockpile at the site or at Whitcomb's or whatever, that's there, that they have not collected money on, from the people disposing of them. And what is there a backlog stockpile someplace of materials that you have not charged for?
Okay, we do charge for every load that comes in. So we do charge for all, just to make sure the understanding is there. So when a shingler comes in with a trailer with asphalt shingles, they do pay us to dispose of the shingles there.
And I think the second part of the question, or the first part of the question was, what was our understanding in years past, you did have a stockpile, again, that you had accumulated without collecting fees and revenue on. And I think one of our rationales and justifications for waiving the fee was that it was only right to give you the chance to work down that inventory. And so the question, do you still,
No,
has that inventory been used?
As Joey was articulating, we have worked that stockpile down to nothing. That was at Whitcomb's. That was where the big stockpile was. Right.
Let me see, Ken, your hand is up.
Hi, everybody. I remembering back to that meeting, and I feel like part of the ask from Myers originally had to do with the effort you guys were putting in to kind of create this potential recyclable material, extra expenditures, hiring people to clean and sort shingles. Since the recycling fell apart, have you continued to pay extra staff to manage these shingles and keep them somehow separate or clean or pulled out of other construction debris?
Yeah, so we continue to sort the asphalt shingles. A lot of times when the loads come in from a shingler, it's not just asphalt shingles. There's wood, there's metal, there's paper, so we have to put it through a cleaning process to get them ready to go and being used at the landfill for the road base. So yeah, we still do, we still put quite a bit of effort into those shingles, and we also have to ship up, use our trucks to ship them up there and everything, so yes.
Paul, can I ask a follow-up?
Related to this issue,
Yes.
clarification of this question, go ahead.
Yeah, the same question. So you're putting effort and some money into cleaning these shingles, and is Casella reimbursing you in any way for these shingles that they're using to avoid expenditures of gravel?
No, they are not.
Thank you.
Are they charging you?
Yes, they are. So just for clarification, as many recycling of any materials, a lot of times you do not receive money for the recycled materials. You pay people to take them for less money than what it would cost you to landfill the products, and that's how you make your money, is by doing it that way. So there are more materials that, like for example, sheetrock. I have to pay to dispose of the sheetrock. We send it out of Pennsylvania, and we have to pay them to take it. But they're recycling it, and that's just part of the business model.
Paul Saylor.
Yeah, this is probably for staff, but what are the other materials that Casella uses for either road base or alternative daily cover?
For alternative daily cover, I think there is fine construction material, which is like very crushed up construction material, or street sweepings that are refined to a specific specification. But to my knowledge, there is no other individualized material like asphalt shingles that gets used for any alternative road cover or infrastructure building at the landfill.
The state of Vermont maintains an approved ADC, alternative daily cover list of materials. As far as items that we acknowledge as seeing the reduced fee, it's limited to the two materials that Joey laid out. Those are what's in our ordinance as sort of solid waste management fee reduced materials, because those have been the ones that have been historically brought to us in the past as being an ask to have those numbers reduced.
And those are still on the reduced. I don't know of any ones that are waived.
Sorry, a
Follow-up
follow-up
question
question
related to this.
For the fine construction material, is that, is that separated out by, contractors or whatever in some way, or Casella, or do they have to
I
manage?
believe that primarily came out of the operation at Myers, because it's actually physical material that falls out of their sorting equipment. Am I understanding that correctly?
Okay.
Would you like me to explain it to you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so when we bought our sorting machines, we bought an extra machine, and what it does is it shakes all of the materials that go into the sorting system, and then it has screens, and the screens screen out. So this was an extra cost of the machine, and it screens out the fine, what we call C&D fines, and they filter down, and then the nail, it's a big magnet, so the nails get stuck to the magnet, and those get recycled as a metal, and then all the stuff drops down into a container, and that's our C&D fines.
Okay. That's helpful, thank you.
Sarah.
Paul, I thought it might be helpful for me to read into the record the ordinance's definition of recyclables. So in the ordinance, it says that recyclable shall mean solid waste that may be reclaimed and or processed and used in the production of raw materials or products. So Paul, I would have a question for Myers folks. You referenced using shingles prior with V-Trans and AOT on the shoulders, and it was mixed with gravel. Were the shingles processed prior to mixing, or were they used kind of as is a whole shingle? And if And what would the difference be between what's now going up as road base? Are the shingles ground or crushed and mixed with something else, or are they used as a shingle?
So with the
Yeah,
road
it's
base,
in the
we had
same
to,
form.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, like in the same form as a shingle, not ground.
So when the specifications for the road shoulder was that the shingles had to be ground up into a specific size to mesh in with the gravel that it was mixed with, and a certain percent, you could have 25% of the mixture be asphalt shingles and 75% be the gravel, so you're saving 75% of the gravel. With the Casella process, is we're replacing 100% of the gravel, so it's not there's no mixing requirement. And that's the only difference between the two. So we did have to do another step, which was grind up the shingles to get them to that specific size.
Are you currently doing that now, Dave? Are they currently being ground or are they used whole?
No, they're whole, that's the way Casella wants them, and that's the best use for them to use them as whole.
Other commissioners' questions? I see Alan has his hand up, and I want to give other commissioners enough first crack. Yeah, Rick?
I seem to recall from some meeting, possibly this corresponding meeting, the last time we considered the waiver, and something in statute or somewhere that said that any material that goes into the landfill is considered to be landfill, and the road surfaces, for instance, are not considered to be a different thing. Any idea what I might have, if there's a statute that's involved in this, what is that, and what is it that I heard? Where does that requirement come from?
I think this might be a question more for staff or Sarah than for the Myers
I
folks.
suspect it is.
I'm not sure that there's a statute that says that. I think
Right.
when we made this recommendation before, we were just pointing out the fact that the beneficial reuse of using it as infrastructure in a landfill means ultimately it's going to be covered up. It doesn't have the potential to come out. It's taking up landfill space. So the recommendation back then was recognizing that it was certainly replacing a mined material and wanting to acknowledge that, but also acknowledging that it was never gonna leave the landfill. It was gonna take up that landfill space that we've identified, which is ultimately disposal of that material. I think that's probably what you were recalling. I don't know if there's anything specifically in statute that identifies that.
Thank you.
I'm assuming, just to go off what Josh was saying, I think basically what it comes down to in our ordinance is it states it is going into the landfill, so that would subject it to the full solid waste management fee. But because of the innovation and the process that is in place with the asphalt shingles to use them as road base and take out the virgin materials, we think that it is the 75% reduction in the fee should apply to this. So basically, as it exists now, if the waiver didn't happen, it would theoretically be full freight solid waste management fee
Of $30.
of $30 a ton. We think that it should be the 25% fee, or 25% of the fee as it's written in our statute should apply to asphalt shingles.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question just for clarification?
On this topic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you charge a fee for the gravel?
Josh, I don't know that.
No, we don't.
Okay, well, I think we're around on our second round, so Alan, and then we'll go to Ken.
So state statute doesn't forbid shingles from disposal on landfill at the present point in time, is that right?
Correct.
And Chittenden County Waste District,
It's okay, go ahead, you can address the question.
yeah,
If you will.
at this point in time, do we ban them?
The waiver is,
The waiver is just for the fee. The state doesn't, it's not banned anymore, but we collect separately and we bring them to a recycle facility in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
That's what we do with our shingles, but
It was in our ordinance.
is in our ordinance, but the waiver, we had to remove that requirement as part of that process. Yeah.
So if Myers was not in the process of processing shingles, like the rest of the state isn't in the process of processing, those shingles go to the landfill from the rest of the state.
Yes.
So if I'm in Rutland or some other place and I'm disposing of shingles, I'll take them to my hauler and he'll take them up and dump them. So that it is a good thing that we're doing with having Myers do that for us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The difference is obviously that they pay the full, that local,
Sure.
that local district's
Yep.
fees, yeah.
Yep.
And the state fee that Myers is exempt from now.
Ken? You're muted, Ken.
What Alan just said made my third question, Paul, so you have to navigate the questions. So regarding to Alan's point, so why aren't all the other haulers in around the state asking for waivers to give their shingles when they take their, keeping them separate when they take their shingles to Casella? That's one question. I would love clarification when the Myers folks said the state isn't taxing them. I didn't know what that meant. Relative to what we do. And then the third question would be back to Josh, just to understanding his point that even if it's used as road base, it's still going into the landfill. I also would have to point out, I assume that if we're not building these roads in the landfill, that the landfill can't continue to accept materials as sort of a counter argument. It's philosophical, but I just want to make sure I'm right about that, Josh. So sorry for 3 questions, but that's.
Okay, well, we got to break them down here. So let's
Josh,
start.
is it yes or no?
Since to me at least, the third question is freshest in mind. Let's go with that.
Yeah, just yes or no on that one.
Yeah, they build roads in the landfill to access the freshest, the newest cell to open up to trash. So they build roads in the landfill as a matter of course, yes.
Okay, so it doesn't make sense to say we shouldn't put it there because it becomes part of the landfill, because if we didn't put it there, there wouldn't be a landfill anymore to put things into.
Well, they would use other materials, Ken, as their road base. That's
Oh,
my.
I know that. I know they have to put something in the landfill to make roads to continue using the landfill. So it might as well be used shingles. Okay.
So let's go back to your, he's got a couple of questions on the table. I'll respect that. Your first question, Ken, again?
Was why aren't all the other haulers around the state of Vermont, as Alan pointed out, asking for the waiver and doing the same thing?
Which is a rhetorical question. Nobody here, I think the answer might be only an opinion, but do you have an opinion? Any thought about that?
Well, the only thing that I know is that there's no one collecting shingles separately besides Myers in the state of Vermont. And sorting them and keeping them separate and cleaning them. There's none of that activity anywhere else in the state.
Okay.
And then Ken, your second question was, why doesn't the state assess a fee for these materials?
Yeah, what did that mean when he said that? Where would that have come in our process?
As part of the original process when this got brought up, and the argument for lack of markets, and the state, as part of the process, had to waive their requirement, waive their landfill ban of shingles. As a matter of course, they waived their franchise, their solid waste. I don't know, what do they call it?
Franchise fee.
It's called the franchise fee.
Yep.
They waived their franchise fee on their per ton of material, per ton of this material going into the landfill.
Because it wasn't going into the landfill, correct?
No, they acknowledged this, essentially the same thing that we did. When we waived our fee, they waived their franchise fee. And I don't know off the top of my head what their franchise, it's $6 and,
$6.
$6 a ton.
yeah. So they waived their fee at the same time that we waived ours. And I believe it was just as a matter of course and partly for the same reasons that we ultimately decided to waive ours at the outset.
Well, just to follow up on that, I did talk to the state today, and they view that this is a recycled material. And they don't make a difference whether it goes on the side of a road shoulder or if it goes in a landfill to make roads. They don't use that distinction. Their distinction is, this is true recycling. You're stopping the use of a virgin raw material by using the shingles this way. So it's a definition of what is recycling.
Dave, who did you speak to about that?
Jeff
Jeff?
Bordeaux.
Paul Stabler.
Yeah, just for context, I was wondering how much, so it looks like we had about 2,700, or you had about 2,700 tons collected of shingles last year, if I'm reading the memo correctly. Do you know how many tons of the fine construction and demolition you sent up there?
Not off the top of my head. I have it in reports, but I can't remember the actual number. It's far less.
Far less.
I would say it's
Okay.
far less, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Allison.
I have two questions, but they're slightly unrelated. So the first one is, if the fee is not waived, it's perhaps a speculation, but would you continue with sending the shingles as material that goes into the road material? Or would that potentially change what you do with the shingles? This is for Myers.
I don't have the answer to that. I mean, I'll go into the financial calculation of what things we do business and try to recycle and what we don't try to recycle. We were recycling wood, and our major outlet gave up on us, and to ship it somewhere else was too expensive, so we had to stop recycling it. So it's all a financial decision.
Second question.
Second question was, do we, or does CSWD or whoever is taking the material right now, the shingles, to use as the road base, are we also taking other types of material that was referenced that can be also used as road base, or is it just the shingles presently?
That's certainly a Casella question. I don't know off the top of my head what other materials and maybe you do, Dave. I don't know of any other material that they're taking. It's so selective what they can use. And I again believe that's also part of a state process to as a beneficial reuse. That I think there's a process to get that approved as material. I don't know off the top of my head what that list is.
Just to follow up on that, the reason I ask is because I do like the idea of not using virgin materials, so if we were to lose the shingles, would it be replaced with something else? Or would there be virgin materials used? Sounds like we don't necessarily know the answer to that. That was context behind that question.
Yeah, Casella would certainly have to replace the shingles with a virgin material. There's no doubt about that.
I'm gonna jump in with a question. It was kind of goes where you were heading here. I think we have 3 price points here. We've got a $30 price point, we've got a recommended $7.50 price point per ton, and then a requested $0 per ton price point. So what's, if the fee were assessed at $7.50 a ton, how sure can we be that the use of this material would be abandoned and we'd be going to virgin material? I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's like, at what point would Casella, it's ultimately Casella's decision, and you've said, if they don't get a good deal, essentially that's my term for what I'm hearing. If they don't get a good price from you, then they're gonna go to virgin material. Well, what's that break-even point for them? I don't know if we can answer that, but it sounds to me in a way that Casella's the one that's getting the break here.
No, because these guys are paying to get rid of it. Casella isn't paying them.
Well, then somebody's getting a break, it seems. Why not just charge more to the people bringing the shingles in to cover the proposed 750 and still maintain this material as usable road base.
Well,
Yeah.
I would argue that we as a society and as a district has been advocating for more recycling, encouraging our residents and our commercials, and we Myers have spent a lot of resources educating and encouraging people to recycle and making that investment in our product. So charging more, we're defeating the purpose. You know, think about if we said 30 years ago, we want to recycle more cardboard, but you're gonna pay more for that because it's the right thing to do. Some people would, others won't. And the answer, I would say your question, if we're not able to pull these shingles out, it's one more product that we're not going to recycle, which means maybe we don't have as many people working. Maybe we're not source separating as much of that product. It's one more thing. Somebody else not pulling as much wood out as we used to. We're just not gonna pull that many shingles out. We might not need the 8 men and women that are working in our facility. We might not need all the extra stuff. So there's the other ancillary impacts on both the business, but also on the environment that we have.
Lee had his hand up, Lee, and then we'll go to Marty.
So along those lines of cost points, what does Casella charge for shingles being dumped for road base?
$20 a ton.
$20 a ton?
Yep.
And they would have to spend probably somewhere around $13 to $15 a ton to buy gravel. Say, just based off a local, Wickham's price point for, I'm sure up there it's all bank run gravel. It's probably not processed gravel or as processed as it is here. And what do you charge when you take in a load? But it's usually a mixed load, correct? And then you run it through your separator and your screener and all that.
Right. Our prices, and people get different prices depending on the customers, could be $150, $160 a ton.
And what's the average ton load you bring up there?
Pardon?
What's the average ton load? Is it like a tandem load? Is it like 14 ton?
Yeah, it's a tandem, 14 to 16 tons.
Okay. So, I mean, it's really a good deal for Casella. They aren't having to pay any money to build roads, but can charge to get the material to build roads. Well, thanks for answering those questions.
Marty, and then we'll go to Paul Stabler.
So I guess I'm wondering about the precedential effect of waiving it again. It seems like we don't have exactly the same rationale as we had in August when there was a stockpile to use up. And there were different financial aspects to that stockpile. The memo says that other materials utilized for infrastructural improvement at the landfill would also get charged 25%. I'm wondering, is that happening now? I mean, are there other dumpers, I don't know what to call them, who are getting rid of stuff for a lower price?
I think that's a question probably for best answered perhaps by staff at this point.
We periodically get these requests. Oftentimes they come in on a per job basis. The one I'm remembering most recently was an aspect of the Burlington High School project where they had impacted soils that were not a hazardous waste, so they did not have to go to a hazardous waste landfill. But there was a certain threshold that they hit that they couldn't be left in place or mitigated in place. And so the request was made primarily due to the volume that they were looking at and the cost that it would take to dispose of that many tons. I can't remember when we came with that request. It was early on in the Burlington High School project, but I believe that 25% was granted that request. As far as other infrastructure improvements, I don't know off the top of my head. I think there's a standing waiver, a standing reduction for concrete that had lead paint on it.
Yes.
And that was a 25% solid waste management fee. I believe that type of material is also used for infrastructure projects within the landfill. But as far as like active generation of material, I don't know any of them off the top of my head. There may not be any.
So Josh, just to be sure I understand, are you saying that in those situations, a waiver of the 25% were granted, or they were charged the 25%?
Oh, yeah, the 25% request was granted.
And as a follow-up question, if I may, that was temporary?
I believe that was for a specific
Particular
job.
project.
Yes.
So
for
it
a specific
wasn't for
project.
multiple years for a particular source?
But we have some materials, and I'm just trying to pull up our ordinance. We have some materials that are listed in the ordinance as you don't need to come for us for a waiver of the fee.
Okay.
They're fixed. And Joey has that
Mixed
list.
construction and demolition debris for recycling and processed concrete contaminated with lead paint when approved by the state for use in the landfill improvements.
So those are the two items that are sort of without
You don't have to come to
without
us.
a need for a waiver.
Pre-approved for the ADC.
Correct.
Is there a definition for that first one?
For mixed construction and demolition debris for recycling. That's, I don't know if there's a definition.
That's our ordinance, right? So
That's
it's
our
gonna be the
ordinance, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we have a specific definition for that.
Unable to answer the question.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I think we'll move on. Ken, your hand is up again.
It's a question for the district. Is the district, in its recommendation, is it aware that Myers is the only company we now know doing this work? And is the district prepared, and will the district be happy with its recommendation if, in fact, it ends up with Myers ending this program, no longer recycling shingles? Thank you.
We are aware. Myers has always been the only C&D recycler in the state. That was why, well, over a decade ago now, 10 or 12 years ago, Myers came to the district and requested that we ban this material from disposal. It was a request to help, basically to help drive that activity, to drive the separation, and to help them prove their model. So we did change our ordinance, and I'd have to double check whether it was 10 or 12 years ago, to accommodate that. Since that time, no one else in the state has taken on this particular business model or this aspect of the business. So they continue to be the only source for C&D separation of materials. As far as would we be happy, I think that's trying to keep emotion out of it.
Sorry.
Right, but you know, we obviously always want folks to do as much separation as possible, but also to the point of for the point of bringing material to processors or true recyclers to be able to turn that material into something new. And I think we need to stand behind our definition in the ordinance of recyclable. I'll certainly be following up with Jeff to get a better clarification on the state's definition of recyclable. But the goal really is to, and I think what we need to do is, as a better job as a state and maybe also as a district, is to better define markets, right? Because we do send the shingles that we collect separated to a market. we don't generate nearly the amount that Myers does. So for us, for CSWD, it makes sense to make the once or twice yearly drive to the recycler. I believe they're in Connecticut, but Josh, you can correct me if I've got that wrong. But we recognize that what that might make sense for one entity may not make sense for another, and we don't get involved in Myers economics or their business model. But to say that there is no market, we can say that there is because we're using one, but the state does need to weigh in to make some kind of a determination, whether it's by volume, whether it's by mileage. Is it better or worse to drive the 250 miles from Chittenden County down to Connecticut to recycle a small load of shingles versus giving them one more use up at the landfill as road base? So certainly philosophically, there would need to be some conversations about, kind of what makes the most sense, what is quote better. If there's a better, would we be unhappy about it or sad about it? I think we always want to support businesses trying to do something more, for the benefit of certainly the environment and for the community. But we recognize that Myers activity is out of the norm. The state has certainly recognized that, and with their waivers and no longer requiring the landfill ban, we have, again, that was one of the other actions last year, was to waive the separation requirement. So in essence, no one is required to separate shingles in Chittenden County any longer. They're not required, they've never been required to bring it to Myers, but they're not required to find a recycler or a processor. So that decision was already made by the board last year.
Thank you. That's a great answer. So I'm hearing that you think that the alternative daily cover rate is a kind of a good compromise, is where we're coming from. And you can't know how it's going to affect someone's business model, but you feel like it represents both sides.
And I think to Margie's point, we do want to be mindful of setting a precedent for the future. And we already are. It's not clearly explicit in the ordinance that shingles can be used for alternate daily cover. We're fitting it into the infrastructure component, landfill infrastructure, where I think it clearly does fit, but it's not as prescriptive as some of the other materials that are mentioned. So to the point of, do we want to be setting a precedent? We would want to then take another look at the ordinance and see if there's a reason to broaden or narrow the definition.
Thank you.
Leslie and then Paul.
Are there other situations where the district's definition of a recyclable differs from the state's? I mean, I can see from the point of view of a hauler, the desire for consistency, but and here we seem, if I'm understanding the conversation, the district is using a different standard than the state.
Leslie, I can answer that. We have the same definition of recycling. We use the same definition that the state did when we rewrote our ordinance the last time we made updates. So we do operate under the same standard.
Yeah, but I understood from Myers, the way they see it is that they have they're confronting the possibility of two different standards, that the state is telling them one thing and we're telling them something else. That's what I'm just wondering if there are other materials where a hauler has encountered that.
I know Sarah mentioned that she was gonna follow up with Jeff. I suspect that I suspect that there will be some disagreement about whether the use of shingles as road base would be considered recycling. We would consider it probably reuse within the landfill, but ultimately disposal. And I suspect that others at the state would concur with that line of thinking.
I think we would categorize it and we don't have this definition in our ordinance as repurposing. It's not being reused as a shingle, but it is being repurposed for something else, and we don't have that definition in our ordinance. And I'm just quickly looking to see if I can spot a state definition of recyclables, Leslie. If I find it, I'll put it in the chat.
It's the same, and Sarah, I can just send you a quick note. But it is the same language as, they go a step further and clarify that waste to energy is also not considered recycling. But it is the same definition.
My sense is that you're gonna resolve this dilemma a little bit offline or through the chat box. Paul Stabler, you had your hand up?
I think maybe the question was already answered by Lee's question, but are all the loads that are brought to Myers with shingles in them, are they all commingled with things like wood and other things? Or do you get some loads that are just shingles from a roofer, say, doing a job? And
Some loads are just shingles, but it is contaminated. So there's never a load that is just shingles. Because if you look at how you do reshingling, there's metal, there's wood, there's paper, and that, they don't separate it, they bring it in like that.
Alright, just wanted to clarify that.
Alan?
I see this as a little bit of a crapshoot. If Myers goes ahead and has to pay her $750 or whatever the number is, that's gonna increase the cost to the people disposing of it and the effort they have to put into that. And they may start to think about whether or not they put it into that program or not. Thereby being that the less shingles that they get, the more gravel they're gonna put in there. And then the shingles become solid waste and the life of the landfill starts to get diminished a little bit. And so I'm really personally leaning that I probably won't support the district in this request.
Well, we don't yet have a motion on the floor.
No, I know that.
And I think we're actually to the point where we could have that motion. Josh, do you have something you wanna?
I just wanted to jump back to Britain's question real quick about the two different materials and just clarify. There are two materials and they're both
Being concrete.
one being
With lead
concrete
paint.
contaminated with lead paint
Uh-huh.
and the other being the fines as Dave described. So it's the fines that are derived from the processing. So it's essentially the fines that
Yep.
Myers is producing. And it's when the state has approved for those as use in landfill site improvements. So those two materials, but we don't define those explicitly, but I think Dave's description and definition
Okay.
work just fine for that
Thanks for
purpose.
following up.
So at this point in the discussion, I think I'd like to get the motion on the floor. We'll still have more chance to discuss this and express opinions about how one might ultimately vote on this. But up to this point, it's been informational and good back and forth. Could we have that motion that's printed in the memo read into the record?
Motion to implement the solid waste management fee on asphalt shingles that are used for road building in the landfill in Coventry effective March 1st, 2025.
Anyone care to make that motion?
So moved, Heinsberg.
Been moved. Do we have a second for the motion?
I second Huntington.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I just have a clarifying question here before we open it up for further discussion. Just want to understand the intent of the motion to implement the solid waste management fee. We haven't defined what that is. Is it the $30, the full $30, or is it the alternative daily cover?
By using the road building in the ordinance, it's the 25%, so they as ADC.
I just want to make sure we're very clear on what that motion is. And at the current $30 per ton full solid waste management fee, we're talking about $7.50 per ton. So it's been moved and seconded. I'll open it up for further discussion and offering of opinions and observations, if there are any. I saw Leslie's hand up first, then we'll go to Rick. Thank you.
Thank you. This is not speaking to the motion, so I'm sorry if this is a little bit out of order. But Sarah's comment that the district apparently, or the ordinance, has not considered or does not include a policy or a position regarding repurposing. I think the board needs to look at that. Because it may be that our definition of recycling is too narrow, and repurposing materials might be something we want to have a look at for inclusion in the ordinance. That's just a note for future.
All right, we'll take that observation. I can see Sarah writing it down, so she'll take that under advisement. Rick?
Procedural question. The waiver is currently set not to expire. It's until further notice.
No.
Am I
Yeah, the waiver-
misreading what's in here?
The waiver that is until further notice is the requirement to separate. The waiver on the fee expired December 31st.
So it has
Last year.
already
Has
expired.
expired.
All right.
So at this very point in time, the fee is $30 per ton. Correct?
Should be.
So
If this
by-
motion were, go ahead.
So by extension, if the motion is denied, we vote it down. The waiver has already expired, so it seems like the effect is going to be the same either way. That is going to, without the waiver, by definition, we're going to have the $750 fee applied.
No, I think I could defer to Sarah. Right now, we're in a $30 per ton.
Correct. Without the waiver, without the applying of the 25% of the fee, their fee would be $30 per ton on all the loads going up there.
So with the current language, the language that exists, barring waivers and any motions, the $750 fee would not apply because it's not considered to be ADC. It's road building, which is a different thing and not considered.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. I needed that clarification.
To further on that, I've got the minutes from our November 15th, 2023 meeting, and I can read those minutes just for total clarity. Motion by Paul Stabler, seconded by Ken Spencer, to continue the waiver of solid waste management fee on asphalt shingles that are used for road building in the landfill in Coventry through December 31st, 2024. And it goes on to say that direct staff to continue to investigate markets for this material and report back to the board. But the operative point I want to make is that our motion authorized the waiver of the fee through December 31st, 2024. At this point in time, my understanding is $30 per ton applies.
No, $750.
No. As of right now, because it hasn't been yet qualified as either ADC or some other material subject to the 25%, every load from January 1 through today should have been charged the $30 fee. So if you haven't been charged the $30 fee, you've gotten a break.
So just
Paul Stabler.
point of clarification, if I'm correct, if I'm understanding this right. If we were to vote down this resolution and we then wanted to go with not charging them anything for this, we would have to have a second motion, right?
That's
Just
my
to be-
understanding,
just
that's
to be
my
clear,
expectation.
Everyone's clear, I just want to make sure of that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Further discussion on the motion? Yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
So can't the motion be amended? The motion could be amended, clarify Paul Stabler's concern rather than having to go to a second.
Certainly would be an option.
An option.
I'll give, we'll wait here a second for that thought to sink in.
So if I might continue, I don't know if Alan would want to propose an amendment, and then we would vote on the amendment before we vote on the motion.
I think we'll take about the same amount of time if we go one way or the other.
Is there proposed language for an amendment to the motion? I didn't hear what Paul was recommending.
I'm sorry, there was a suggestion that a board member might want to make an amendment to the motion. And I was saying that, in my estimation, whether that happens, we follow that path, or should this motion that's on the floor now be turned down, then we have the opportunity to entertain a new motion. Rick?
So forgive me, I'm not quite following all the, or I want to make sure I'm following all the twists and turns. If the motion is passed, the solid waste management fee would be $30 a ton.
$7.50.
Would be $7.50.
If this motion that's on the table right now.
I need to see the motion. Did you read the motion as it exists at the very end here?
I think how it is written right here isn't clear, and it should be motion to implement a motion to implement a 25%, or now I'm like looking at how to do it right, but the 75% reduction of the solid waste management fee on the asphalt shingles that are being used in the landfill.
And I would agree with that, because if it's implementing the solid waste management fee on asphalt shingles, and none of the exemptions apply to the asphalt shingles because it's not ADC, then it would be a $30 fee.
Right.
As I'm hearing this. If we pass it, it would be $30.
I think we're to the point, I'm challenged with my my Robert's Rules mastery here. I think we're ready for a friendly amendment to clarify the wording of the current motion, which I'd say that's why I asked for clarity once the motion was made, just to make sure we understood it, but it was just left without amending it. So who made the motion?
I moved it.
Okay, would you be open to a friendly amendment to clarify this so that the motion reads, motion to implement the solid waste management fee at the alternative daily cover rate of 25%.
Yes.
Maybe the secretary, if you could just.
To reread what you just stated?
Yes.
To implement the solid waste management fee at the alternative daily cover rate of 25% on asphalt shingles that are used for road building in the landfill in Coventry. That was seconded by Barb.
That you're accepting as the maker of the motion, that language, is it clear to you?
I'm accepting that language.
Yes, and who seconded?
I did, Barb, and I accept it.
Okay, so now the motion as we're discussing right now is to approve, or is to apply the solid waste management fee of 25%, which is $7.50 per ton on the shingles that are disposed at Coventry. Rick?
And so, furthermore, what happens if we vote the motion down?
The status quo exists, which is $30 per ton.
Okay.
And we need another motion if we want to eliminate it.
Someone might.
That's, I wanted to make sure that the different paths were clear. Thank you.
So unless somebody is willing to make a motion right now to amend the current motion, I think we're ready then to vote on the motion. With the understanding there's an opportunity to make a new motion. Because I think this is not going to be a unanimous vote, we're going to do a roll call vote, which is a requirement when we do a hybrid meeting. So if there are no other questions or discussion, I think we're ready to vote on this, and I'll ask the secretary or the clerk to read the roll and to vote on this motion. A vote in affirmative would be to adopt the $7.50 per ton rate on these shingles. A vote no means you object to, or you do not support $7.50. You might support $30, you might support something else. Just to be clear, voting yes supports the motion at $7.50 per ton.
And just a friendly reminder that we have board rep and alternate, and so the board rep is the voting person. So I'll do the roll call. Bolton, I have as vacant tonight. Burlington,
No,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Colchester,
Yes.
Essex,
No.
I have Essex Junction as not
Think he's
present.
on.
He's in Thailand.
Heinsberg,
No.
Huntington,
Yes.
Jericho.
no,
I have Milton as vacant tonight. Richmond,
no,
Shelburne,
Yes.
South Burlington.
Aye.
I have St. George as vacant. Underhill,
Yes.
Westford is vacant. Williston,
Vacant.
no longer on. Winooski,
Yes.
it is 16 yes, 17 no.
So the motion fails.
I am double checking.
We are current.
I apologize, hold on. Alan, I have you as a no, is
Yes.
that correct?
Correct.
At 3, I'm just double checking every count very quickly.
That's too close.
2, 5. Williston was not, it's tie 16-16.
So,
Apologies, I had Essex as 4 and it's 3 votes.
Maybe Thomas can help me out here when it's a tie vote.
The motion fails, I believe, correct?
Fail.
Thomas?
That is correct. It requires a majority to be approved, so
Very good,
if
thank you.
it's tied, it fails.
Thank you. So the motion fails.
I would make a motion that the Chittenden Solid Waste District not charge a management fee on asphalt shingles being used for road construction within the landfill in Coventry
You have a time.
for till December 31st, 2026.
Do we have a second to the motion?
second Jericho.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to waive the solid waste management fee on shingle material brought to the Coventry landfill for use in road material, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think we can, that's the essence of the motion. I do see, Ken, your hand is up. Is it related to this?
Yeah, I would just love to hear from more of the no votes who were quiet in the previous discussion to get some understanding. I know Paul said there were a lot of different scenarios that could create someone to vote no, so I'd love to hear some people who voted no, hear why. Perhaps it's all the same reason they think it should be 0, but I can't tell unless they speak.
Well, we'll put the request out if somebody wants to express their opinion, that's fine, but I'm not going to require
Can't
anybody.
force anybody, I'm just curious to hear.
Leslie, your hand is up.
I didn't speak to why I would be in favor of a 0 fee, so I'll speak now. Seems to me that the district has an interest in general in repurposing materials when it's not economic or feasible to recycle them. And that's why I also feel that that's something that we have to look at more closely in our ordinance for other materials that may fall into this category. But for now, I think we want to provide an incentive to continue an environmentally sound practice.
Thanks, Leslie. Andrew?
Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I was a no vote, so I just wanted to clarify my position a little bit. I completely agree with Leslie. Just thinking about it here, I just would hate to see that go away, and I guess it would be nice to get another, a $7.50 tip fee out of it. But if they were to redo their thinking or their calculus or whatever and decide to completely do away with that, I think that would be a loss. And I think it's like Leslie said, it would be good to incentivize that. And I guess it would be a separate discussion for whether, we wanted to talk about that in the future for other things, but I just personally, I would like to see that continue. So I would hate to see trying to get the $7.50 out of it and have it go away entirely.
Thanks, Andrew. Barb?
I guess one of my questions is what impact this would have financially upon the district, because that's a heavy weight of material. So that's actually probably financially it is an impact. And I think that if there's any way to put any kind of pressure on Casella to actually take the burden of this versus the district I think it might be something to look at.
So Barb, in the memo, I think I can speak to your first question. It was addressed underneath the table on the last page of the memo. And staff had identified, had the $7.50 fee been applied to the material brought to Coventry in 2024, it would have totaled $20,113. Marty's hand was up, and then we'll go to Rick.
Yeah, I as somebody who voted yes, I think it's possible to vote yes out of, and part of my concern was if we didn't vote yes and a motion was not made or did not pass to charge nothing, we would be back up to $30 a ton, which I would not be in favor of. So, I would agree totally with Leslie that we need to look at this and find a way to make our ordinance match what we seem to feel.
Thanks, Margie. Rick, and then we'll go to Lauren.
Follow up on the crapshoot analogy. If the ante isn't big enough to make it worth taking that bet, I don't think, not for $20,000. I think we do have an interest in seeing this work continue. And we don't know what their business decision is going to be, and I don't think we have a right to ask them what that business decision is going to be. We just have to do what we think is right. I agree that there are questions about precedent, and I'm getting the impression that we may have some holes in our ordinance, in the ordinance, that we should take a look at. Is repurposing something that we should support in the same way that we do recycling? So I'm just not willing to take the chance for $20,000, but I would love to get do the work in the next 2 years such that we don't have to have the same discussion in February of 2027.
Lauren, your hand is up, then we'll go to Lee.
Yeah, that was actually along the same lines as my question. I'm not familiar, but what is the typical process and timeline for updating the ordinance? Is it 6 months? Is it 2 years? Is it 6 years? What does that look like?
We're much more efficient than that. Joey and Josh can speak to the process, but certainly not years.
We do it as needed. And I think we've talked internally about some changes potentially happening later this year. The timeline for those changes is like, I think at its fastest, which was this past time when we just changed the solid waste management fee, is it's essentially like 3 board meetings, and then there's a public meeting process after the fact that sort of extends much longer, because we have to give the voting public a chance to basically have a process to sign up, petition, and go through that process. So I think the entire process is probably in the 6 to 8 month range, but when we're talking internally, we're talking about a probably 3 or 4 month process depending on how far we extend it. Internally, it ends up being much longer than that because we come to an agreement internally about what we want to present to you all. And then at that first board meeting, the intention is to have very few changes. It's sort of our best crack at what we want the changes to look like. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yes, thank you.
Lee?
So yeah, the reason I voted no, I didn't want to vote just to not have the fee assessed at $30 a ton. But I also wanted to hear more information and clarification on to all the points made in repurposing asphalt shingles. It's not an indefinite extension of the waiver. It's until December 31st of 2026. And in that amount of time, I believe we can get some more information and have a more informed decision without, I don't want to call it penalizing Myers, but they are, providing a service that nobody else is providing and providing a cleaner product that has a use. So that's why I voted no.
I wanted to offer a comment and say, I voted in support of the initial motion. I'll probably vote against this motion. But first I want to say, I really appreciate the leadership that Myers is taking on this issue. Nobody else is going out there trying to solve this problem. And, you're running a business and you're putting money on the line. And I very sincerely appreciate the leadership. And I think I can speak on behalf of the full board that we do appreciate this very much. My concern is that my perception is you're kind of stuck in the middle here. And I think it's only reasonable that this material, that the parties that are benefiting from it step up and share some of that burden. And that would be Casella in this case. And if there's a way for them to shoulder a little bit more of the burden and recognize the benefit they're getting out of this, I would like to see that happen. That's Representative from Underhill speaking on that point. Lee, your hand is up. Is it another follow-up comment? Further comments and discussion on the motion? Ken, then Leslie.
So Paul, am I following your thinking that if we charge $7 per ton and Casella reduced their charge to Myers by $7, that it would be a net wash to Myers and they wouldn't have to end their business model? Is that what you're thinking?
Not sure that's my.
Well, how can Casella carry some burden if they don't reduce the cost to Myers?
Well, it wouldn't be a pass-through cost to the customer dropping the material off at Myers. Because that's what they're going to end up doing, is charging more to the customer.
What if Casella reduces their charge for the materials? Then they wouldn't have to pass that on to the customer.
That's a big.
We're speculative.
Can I make a point?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm just saying, anything's possible.
So if I own a landfill and I was getting $80 a ton for the stuff coming in the landfill, and I'm only getting $20 a ton for shingles, my goal might be to move those shingles into the category where I'm getting $80 a ton. Just a point.
No.
Just a
Thank
point.
you. Thank you.
And I don't really want to go down this debate too much. What I'm stuck on is the alternatives to go out and buy gravel. They don't have to buy gravel at whatever the per ton rate is. They're getting a better deal because you're paying them to take your shingles, and I'll just
They would
leave
get
it at that.
$80 a ton if we didn't give them to them for road base.
Leslie, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. Look, the district can only vote on measures that the district has control over, and speculating about what Casella could, might, should is completely irrelevant to this discussion, and I'd like to call the question.
Question has been called. I don't believe we need a second for that. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
We have the motion to be read,
No, this is calling the question.
We're voting
Oh, I'm
on the
sorry.
motion to
Excuse
call
me.
the question,
Forgive me.
and then go to voting on the motion.
Okay.
All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
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 Oh,
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The question has been called. We're back to the motion, which, could you just read the motion?
Alan made the motion that CSWD shall not charge the solid waste management fee on asphalt shingles within the landfill in Coventry until December 31, 2026.
No, that's, we specifically said, shingle material used for infrastructure or road building. We,
Road base.
The motion that Alan stated, the initial one referenced ADC. The second motion that was made was that CSWD would not charge the solid waste management fee on asphalt shingles within the landfill in Coventry until December 31, 2026.
that's not what I recall, but.
I would make an amendment that you put for alternate daily cover or roads.
What I have recorded, I wrote down it as well, move that CSWD not charge the solid waste management fee on shingles used for road base in Coventry through
Right.
12/31/26.
Yeah, that's what I recall, yeah.
We're clear on the motion?
Thank you.
Since I believe this will not, again, be a not unanimous, we're going to do a roll call vote.
Do it a little quicker this time. Bolton is vacant. Burlington,
Yes.
Charlotte,
Yes.
Colchester,
Yes.
Essex,
Yes.
Heinsberg.
Yes.
Essex Junction is vacant. Heinsberg is a yes. Huntington.
Yes, yes,
Jericho,
Yes,
Milton is vacant. Richmond,
Yes.
we do have them. It's passed. Shelburne,
Yes,
South Burlington,
Nay.
St. George is vacant. Underhill,
No?
and Westford and Williston are vacant. Winooski.
No.
Motion carries. It is 24 yes, 8 no.
Very good, the motion carries. And the waiver stands for almost a full 2 years. Thank you very much for your time to come in tonight and make the
Put
presentation,
it
and
on the
again,
calendar
appreciate
to
it.
come in September, October,
Well, hopefully I won't be here, but whatever.
Will you be here? Give you a
probably.
I would like to thank everybody, the board and the staff for the lively discussion. And Sarah, we used to ban shingles from the landfill in Chittenden County, and we would really be happy if we did that again. So, and I know you had talked about it a little bit, that we used to have them banned, and we would be happy to pursue that again if you're up for it. Working on it.
That's up to the board. That was, they waived that requirement last year with your waiver for the fee, so we should certainly talk about that.
We'll take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank you very much.
Yep. We're now ready to move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 5, which is the project update on the new MRF. So, Sarah?
Okay. Yes, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. First, I need to attempt to do the slideshow. Let's see here. Let's mess up this part of it. Okay. Bear with me here. Oh, actually, Amy, I'm not seeing. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm hoping that everyone is seeing a full screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So I was asked to give a brief update on the new MRF project. And so we're going to go through the slides. I know we're quite behind, so I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to leave time for questions. So as I'm starting to do with most of our memos, or all of our memos, hopefully, I'm giving you an overview and a synopsis. So this is just describing kind of where we find ourselves now. We have not actually done much work on this project except for to find a new location since June. So basically most of the design stopped since then, with just a little bit of redesign. We ceased the production of as much of the system equipment as possible. We had the permitting all in hand, but for wetlands, so any further on that had stopped. But our goal now is to continue towards this process, breaking ground hopefully mid-fall or sooner. We would love to break ground in mid-September, but we just want to try to catch this construction season to get things underway. So our MRF norms, just for folks who may be tuning in from the public at a later date, is we sort and process from recyclables. So glass is the only one that is sorted and then processed. The rest of the materials are sorted, baled, and sent to market. We take 2D and 3D shape and materials, and these acceptance varies by shape, weight, and rigidity, meaning flexible film, for example, is not accepted at the MRF because it is not rigid enough. This is our current facility, and as a reminder for newer members of the board, it was built in 1993. It currently sits on just over 3 acres. It was designed for 25,000 tons per year. We are currently processing about 44 to 45,000 tons per year. This facility is just shy of 37,000 square feet, and you can see what is contained in that. The small, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse or not, but these white bales in the middle top part of the screen, and these blue and red bales there, those are baled material that are stored outside, and that's part of our issue with this current facility, is that we are storing recycling outside. We are storing our processed glass outside, and that is not a best practice. The modern MRF, which is what we're aiming to build, we are designing it to accept up to 75,000 tons per year. Needed for a building of that size, ranging between 60 and 90,000 square feet, is between 5 and 9 acres. So at 3 acres, we would never be able to, even if we wanted to take down our current MRF and build new, we would not be able to fit a modern facility on those 3 acres. Normally, you want to have between 3 and 5 days storage on your tip floor. That's especially important in cold weather climates like we have. Bale storage, ideally, it's between 10 and 20,000 square feet, again, to keep everything indoors and keep it dry and market ready. In our current MRF, the technology we have is for our glass crushing and glass cleaning system. We also have a magnet, but that's it. So in modern MRFs, they all have an eddy current, they'll have optical sorters, they are starting to have robotics, there's a lot of AI. And also one of the things that we find we think is important is to have an education center and a community space, because we do so many tours, and we think it's really critical to have the public see what's happening and understand recycling even better. So this is, and again, I tried to outline it in yellow. This is the property under consideration for purchase, and really nothing more can happen on this project until we secure a site. Because from there, redesign happens, permitting happens. That's when we can really start going again, but we're pretty stuck in a holding pattern until we secure a site. So you can see Redmond Road snakes its way past the acres, the 38.5 acres, and we own just about all of the property to the right or to the east of that straight yellow line delineating the western boundary of the parcel under consideration. And I want to stress, this is for illustrative purposes only. So if we were, I apologize for my voice. if we were to put our current initial iteration of the new MRF on the Heinsberg Sand and Gravel property, this is how it would fit it. And I don't think it would fit that far north, frankly. I think we would probably scooch it further to the south. But for folks who are not engineers, including myself, a way to look at this property map, the wider the space between the lines, that is the flatter the area. So if you see really thin lines, that means it is a steep slope. So you can see that there's a very large amount of space on this parcel that is considered flat. So we would be looking to build somewhere within that flat area. The good thing about this parcel as well, this particular one, obviously is being on Redmond Road and in Williston, but there's a lot of flexibility on this site to position the building where it's optimal. So up towards the northern part of the parcel where it is flat, but that is also wetland. So we wouldn't go any further north. The parcel gives us some flexibility to expand to the west as well. Whereas on the other parcel, the property that we were initially looking at, we were not going to be able to expand the building at all. We were hemmed in on all sides by the Velco Road and by wetlands. There was no way for us to expand. This current depiction, even with the gray asphalt, uses fewer than 6 acres. So of 38.5 acres, fewer than 6 would actually be disturbed. So this particular parcel does use, it requires less earthwork, so less digging, less asphalt, less concrete. The wetlands review has already been done and has been deemed complete. They're just waiting for a permit, and then that delineation will be approved and we'll receive a wetlands permit for this site. That was the only due diligence that was allowed ahead of purchase and sale negotiations, but it was critical, obviously, so we were thankful that that was allowed to take place ahead of time. So the work to be done, if we are able to meet this this deadline, obviously purchasing property is the first thing. We want to get that done as early as possible. Hopefully by the end of March, we will have property. So then the next few analyses that still need to be done that are critical for siting, geotech, habitat, conservation review, archaeology, we're still pending, needing to know if we need to do a full archaeological analysis. Once those are done, the building redesign would occur, and we're not looking to actually redesign excuse me, much at all, but because the original parcel was being built into the reason the slope of the property, so we were building into the side of a hill, and that meant that we didn't need an elevator because we were creating a mezzanine. We will need an elevator to for ADA purposes, Americans with Disabilities Act purposes, and we have the opportunity again to create a ring road for safety so that emergency vehicles can access all aspects of the building. That was questionable the last time, so there is some redesign to be done. We'll take advantage of that, and where we can move things that were kind of crunched for space and give them more space. It's better to do that now rather than later. After the redesign on the site, after we understand the restrictions, then the re-estimation for the construction costs and the re-estimate of the schedule would happen, permits, and then breaking ground. So the original, and when I say original, 2022 cost estimate for the construction that is presented to voters was 27.5 million. Of that, we asked for a bond vote 22. We were looking to put in 5 and grants of 500,000. After the equipment price came back in, it had to be rebid because the original vendor let us know of a significant increase. So we just rebid with the 3 top vendors. That did increase the price because the price of steel had increased between 22 and 23, adding $1 million. So that brought the construction and system estimate up to 28. And then with after we had the initial estimate for construction, due to the site conditions, a better understanding of the site conditions, meaning the heavy clay and all the earthwork involved, and the length of the road, the access road, added another $2.5 million to bring the estimate up to $31 million. Original sources of funds to meet the 31 prior estimate, plus now a $3 million land purchase potentially if that is approved. The bond is still 22. The grants are now up to $1.75 million, thanks to a grant from the state. The 1.5, the original grant of 500,000, we only received 250, but we are thankful for that as well. That would mean if we were to use CSWD capital, we would be looking at 10.25 million. All total in our undesignated reserves, we currently, as of today, have $11.7 million in undesignated reserves. There are some projects that are had been approved of the capital budget last year and the year before. We carried some over that we are likely not going to do. So that has potential to add back in about $1 million or $1.2 million back into the capital reserve. So our expenses to date, design, architecture, permitting, just under 300,000. The equipment system, which is 65% of the total cost at 10.5, that has been paid. Construction, this has been paying REARC for their unanticipated consulting time. They've been a great partner in helping us to understand the current state of construction, to offer some really great insight onto how we might want to consider different design changes and what we can do and best practices, just under 20,000. We've made 4 bond payments in the amount of just under $670,000, and engineering consulting of just under $100,000. That was for Tony Barbagallo for his work, and he was hired as an engineering consultant before we hired Kaylee Barber as our project manager. And when Kaylee very quickly got up to speed, and so we did not exercise the second option on Tony's contract, saving some money there. So to date, our expenses are about 11.5. So some of the factors affecting future costs, again, negative, certainly the general high cost of construction. We've seen in the United States, it may even be higher here in Chittenden County, but in the United States, construction costs have increased 20% since 2020. There's a long lead time for certain components, pieces that we need. Very specifically, variable drive engines and motors have a very, very long lead time. You cannot not count the Trump administration 25% tariff on Canadian steel. That was what was bid in the previous iteration. And the land purchase, it's $3 million that we had not intended to spend. However, there's a lot of positives. So with a siting, if we are to purchase the property on Red Bin Road, there will be far less earthwork or far less digging needed. The soil is far better for construction, stormwater and septic, because it is sand versus the clay that was on the previous site. Similarly, less asphalt, less concrete. We don't have residential neighbors down at that end of the road, which is a benefit. It's again, reiterating a minimal impact to the overall site. There's currently 25 open acres or flat level acres. There's another 7 that could be suitable to build, and then the remainder is pretty steep, and we will most likely will just never touch that land. That part that's steep brings everything closer, to the Wilson Drop-Off Center maintenance roll-up facilities. It's right across the street from the ORF, so it helps to consolidate the operations, and it does have room for future expansion. I'm going to stop my sharing. I recognize that was a very fast run through, so I definitely want to open it up for questions. And yes, can we circulate the presentation after the meeting? Absolutely.
Thanks for the presentation, Sarah. A couple of questions. It looks like Lee.
Yeah, when you say future expansion, do you think there's maybe room to build a facility, to replace the one you're in out in South Burlington? Make like a campus there, or?
There's room for expansion both of the MRF itself. So if we found a need to expand the tip floor, for example, or to do something different with bale storage, we could add on to the physical building of the MRF. Or if we wanted to add on, say, a special recycling component for the oddball recycling materials that we don't want through the MRF, but we want to recycle. Things that, like film, like foam. We would have room to do that on that existing building. But yes, there is also on that parcel towards the southerly part of the parcel that abuts our current property of 1021 and 1043, there's buildable acreage there as well. So we would have contiguous acreage. There's just under 5 acres between 1021 and 1043. There's another 5 to 7 buildable on that end of the Heinsberg Sand and Gravel property. So we're looking at potentially 10 acres that could be used for either, if we wanted to build a new administrative office, plenty of room for that, or build a special recycling building there. Certainly some options for flexibility.
Thank you.
Further questions on this update? We will be continuing our discussion next up, there will be an executive session to discuss the real estate transactions. So if you've got questions related to that, we can hold off, I think, but other questions that can be asked in public session not related to any negotiations. None in this room. I'm seeing no hands raised on Zoom, so I think we're then ready to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an executive session to discuss real estate negotiations. Do we have a motion that can be read into the record?
Motion that the Board of Commissioners of the Chittenden Solid Waste District go into executive session to discuss real estate negotiations where premature general public knowledge would clearly place the district, its member municipalities, and other public bodies or persons involved at a substantial disadvantage, and to permit authorized staff and other invited interested parties to be present for this session.
So moved, Essex.
Second, Jericho.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we enter executive session. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? We can now enter executive session, and as usual.
To the Board of the District with Heinsberg Sand and Gravel for the acquisition of the land and premises containing approximately 38.50 acres of land in the town of Williston, Vermont, with parcel ID number 04010.063000 and span 759-241-11539, knowing the property, and for the purchase price of $3 million with such insertions and modifications and additions as she determines to be necessary and appropriate and otherwise to be in the interests of the district. And 2, all other documents and instruments necessary or convenient in connection with the closing of the purchase of the property as the executive director deems necessary and in the district's best interests. The executive director is further authorized to expend such funds as necessary to meet any additional costs or fees associated with closing on the purchase of the property.
So move, South Burlington.
Seconded, Essex.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to authorize and empower the executive director to enter into a purchase and sale agreement as described in the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to let you know that I did email CCTV, but I am recording, so I'll send him this piece of it. He has not gotten back on, but the email was sent, so.
Thank you for that housekeeping note. Okay, we're at discussion on this motion. Hearing none, I think we're then ready for the question. We're going to do a roll call vote on this, so if the secretary can lead us through that.
Bolton is vacant. Burlington.
Yes.
Charlotte.
Aye.
Colchester.
Yes.
Essex.
Yes.
Essex Junction is vacant. Heinsberg.
Yes.
Huntington.
Yes.
Jericho.
Leslie, you're muted.
Sorry, guys, yes.
Middleton is vacant. Richmond.
Yes.
Shelburne.
Yes.
South Burlington.
Aye.
St. George is vacant. Underhill.
Yes.
Williston is vacant. Westford and Williston are vacant. Winooski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The ayes have it, it's unanimous. We have authorized the executive director to hopefully conclude a purchase of this property. Yes,
Thank you very much.
thank you for your
Really
endurance.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, hit the ground running from here on. Perfect. Thank you.
We are now ready for the last item on the agenda, which is other business. Is there any other business to bring before the board tonight?
I move we adjourn. Seconded Essex.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.